I don't think there's any such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. I think the worst thing that can happen to the environment is if it becomes the province of a single political party. But you can't talk honestly about the environment in any context today without speaking critically of this White House and this Congress. This has been the most anti-environmental government that we've ever had in American history, bar none. If you look at NRDC's website, the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is one of the groups for which I work, you'll see listed there 400 major environmental rollbacks that have been promoted or implemented by this administration over the past 6 years as part of a deliberate, concerted effort to eviscerate 30 years of environmental law. It's a stealth attack. The White House has used all kinds of ingenious machinations to conceal its radical agenda from the American public, including Orwellian rhetoric. When they want to destroy the forest, they call it the Healthy Forest Act. When they want to destroy the air, they call it the Clear Skies Bill. But most insidiously, they have put polluters in charge of all of the agencies that are supposed to be protecting us from pollution. Most of us don't know about it, don't make the connection, because we have a negligent and indolent press in this country that has simply let down American democracy. I have 3 sons who have asthma. 1 out of every 4 black children in America's cities now has asthma. We know that asthma attacks are triggered primarily by bad air, by ozone and particulates, and the principal source of those materials in our atmosphere are 1,100 coal-burning power plants that are burning coal illegally. It's been illegal for 18 years. The Clean Air Act required that they clean up 18 years ago, and many of them did. In Massachusetts and the rest of New England, most of our plants complied with those laws. But about 1,100, most of them in the red states, did not. And the Clinton administration was prosecuting the worst 75 of those plants criminally and civilly for violating the law. But this is an industry that donated $48 million to President Bush during the 2000 cycle and have given $58 million since. And one of the first things that George Bush did when he came into office was to order the EPA and the Justice Department to drop all those lawsuits. And I'll be able to watch my children gasping for air on bad air days because somebody gave money to a politician. And if you go to EPA's website today, not NRDC, but federal EPA, you'll see that that decision alone by President Bush kills 18,000 Americans every year. 6 times the number of people who were killed in the World Trade Center attacks, but year after year after year after year. This should be the front page headline of every newspaper in this country every day. But you won't read about it in the American press. 14 months ago, the EPA announced that in 19 states, including Vermont, it's now unsafe to eat any freshwater fish caught in the state because of mercury contamination. The mercury is coming from those same coal-burning power plants. We know a lot about mercury we didn't know a few years ago. We know, for example, that according to CDC, 1 out of every 6 American women now has so much mercury in her blood that her children are at risk for a grim inventory of diseases: autism, blindness, mental retardation, heart, liver, kidney disease. Today, according to CDC, there are 240,000 children born in this country every year who've been exposed to dangerous levels of mercury in their mother's wombs. The Clinton administration, recognizing the gravity of this national health epidemic, reclassified mercury as a hazardous pollutant under the Clean Air Act. That triggered a requirement that all of those plants remove 90% of the mercury within 3.5 years. It would have cost them less than 1% of plant revenues, a great deal for the American people, but still billions of dollars for that industry. And that's the industry that gave this president $100 million. And about 12 weeks ago, the White House announced that it was abolishing the Clinton-era rules and substituting instead rules that were written by utility industry lobbyists that will require that industry to never have to clean up the mercury. And that is what government has become under these people who are controlling Washington today. It's about plunder, not about public service. And you know, we are living in a science fiction nightmare here in Vermont and the rest of the country, where my children and the children of most Americans, including every child in the state of Vermont, can now no longer engage in the seminal primal activity of American youth, which is to go fishing with their father and mother in the local fishing hole and come home and eat the fish because somebody gave money to a politician. I live 2 hours south of the Adirondack Mountains. I take my kids fishing, hiking, hunting, swimming, camping there. This is the oldest protected wilderness on the face of the earth, protected forever wild since 1888. We had a right to believe that generations of our citizens would be able to enjoy those pristine landscapes, but today 1/5 of the lakes in the Adirondacks is sterilized from acid rain, coming from those same coal-burning plants, and this president, having accepted $100 million from that industry, has put the brakes on the statutory requirements that they clean up the acid rain, and this year EPA announced that as a direct result of those rollbacks, the levels of sulfur dioxide have gone up in America's air for the first time since the passage of the Clean Air Act. This is what we are dealing with. This is not just an assault on our environment, it is the subversion of our democracy. Now, you know, this is where our values come from. We're protecting nature because it enriches us. It connects us to who we are. It connects us, and particularly wilderness, which is the undiluted work of the Creator. We have an administration now in Congress and the White House who claims to be an administration of values. And they say they love Christianity, but they have violated every one of the manifold mandates of the Christian faith, that we care for the environment and that we treat our children with respect and dignity. When I was a little boy, I went across the country with my uncle Jack Kennedy, and I went to Europe with my father. And everywhere we went, we were met by vast crowds of people, hundreds of thousands of people, who came out because they loved America. They looked to us for moral authority. They proudly named their streets after our presidents, Washington and Jefferson and Jackson and Lincoln and Roosevelt and Kennedy. And I remember the day after 9/11, when the headline on the biggest newspaper in France, Le Monde, was "We're all Americans now." And when for 2 weeks there were candlelight vigils all over Tehran in sympathy among the democratic movements that were then burgeoning before they were marginalized by this war and thrown out. But the burgeoning were candlelight vigils for the American people, for their love of our country. And it took us 230 years of disciplined, visionary leadership by Republicans and Democratic leaders, presidents, in order to fill those vast reservoirs of public love, of moral authority, of leadership. We were the most beloved nation on the face of the earth. I saw the hope for American leadership in the world in the faces of those crowds of hundreds of thousands of people that I saw when I was a little boy. And these people who are in the White House today and in Congress have no clue. They don't know how to run a foreign policy. They don't even know what they've lost. They don't understand our country. And they don't understand the values that made our country great. And you know, I'll say one last thing, and this may be unfair, but I look at this White House sometime, and I say to myself, how do they get so many draft dodgers in one place? Like, the president, Dick Cheney, 6 deferments, John Ashcroft, 7 deferments, Karl Rove, Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl, all the people, the neocons who planned this war. You can't find a neocon who's, ever been to war. And all their buddies, Rush Limbaugh, Dennis Hastert, Tom DeLay. These are people who don't understand what it is that makes America worth fighting for and worth dying for. And our country, as these wonderful kids who are over in Iraq have shown, is worth fighting and dying for. And these people think that the only purpose of America is just to come here and make your pile bigger, and then whoever dies with the most stuff wins. But we know that there's something more about our country, and that our country is worth fighting for. All of you've got to get out on election day. This Vermont election is a critical election. I came up here because I'm going to the states that are the most critical in this process to take back this Congress so that we can start having the hearings and we can start taking back the America that we love. Thank you all very much.